Girl, let me tell you about this time. I was working at this temp job and it was at an accounting office or tax office or something. It was accounting. And I received no training. I had to figure everything out on my own. In a few weeks, probably about a month or so into the job, I was called into the conference room by this guy who was there. And he wasn't a manager or anything. He was just there. I guess he was the longest employee they had, longest tenured employee. And he proceeded to tell me that he had to let me go. He wasn't even in a management position, but the owner of the business told him to handle it. And I asked the guy the reason for letting me go. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was not making a scene. I was asking him a straightforward question because I deserved an answer. And he looked at me and he started yelling, "Don't get upset. Don't get upset. There's no reason to get upset." And I looked at him like it was absolutely crazy. Because first of all, I wasn't upset. I was calm. I mean, I was upset, but I wasn't yelling. I was calm. I was composed. He literally is letting me go. And I actually have the right to be upset if I wanted to be. I wasn't yelling, but it clicked at that moment that there is nothing I can do here. He is going to think whatever he wants to think. He's going to create his own narrative regardless of how I show up. And I realized in that moment that I had been sitting at a table that was never built for me anyway. So I walked out of that building and I said something to myself at that moment that I would never forget. They will always treat you this way. There is nothing you can say, there's nothing you can do to change how they see you. So you have to go out and get it yourself. You have to go out and build your own business. And that was over 15 years ago, and it's still happening to this day, which is exactly why we need to talk about it. So what happened to me in that conference room is not just my story. It is a pattern. It's so documented and so consistent that researchers have been writing about it for decades. And I did some research on this, and here's some data that I'd like to share with you. So in a single quarter of 2025, over 300,000 Black women exited the labor force. 300,000. And in just 1 month, February to March of 2025, there was a 2.52% decline in employed Black women. The unemployment rate for Black women hit 7.5% in September of 2025. And layoffs have been concentrated in the exact sectors where Black women are most represented: federal government and nonprofit work, where Black women are employed at nearly double the rate of the general workforce. And here's the corporate promotion data that will not surprise you at all. It won't. For every 100 men promoted to manager, only 74 women of color are promoted. And women hold only 29% of C-suite roles, and that number did not move. It did not move a single percentage point between 2024 and 2025. And only 46% of companies say the advancement of women of color is even a priority of theirs. Interesting. So you see, the table was not built for us. And the data confirms what our bodies already knew. But here's the part of the story that is changing, and I'm getting giddy thinking about it. And I need you to pay attention to this part because this is good. Black women are now the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the United States. Black women-owned businesses grew 13% between 2024 and 2025, with a 6% increase in revenue. So more than 2 million Black women-owned enterprises that are now generating over $118 billion annually. We stopped waiting for a seat, sis. We started building our own table. Now, I want to name something that does, I don't know, not show up in the data, but it actually lives in the body of every Black woman who has spent time in corporate America. It is the performance tax. And researchers call it code switching and overperforming. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But what it actually feels like is this. So you walk in a room, boardroom, conference room, wherever, and before you say a single word, You are already managing how you will be perceived. You modulate your voice. You choose your words carefully. You monitor your facial expressions. You make yourself smaller and softer and less threatening, more palatable, right? More acceptable, more whatever the room needs, or actually whatever the room needs you to be, so that you can actually get the work done, the work that you were hired to do. You just want to get through this. And the sad thing is, you do this every single day, in every single meeting, in every email, in every performance review, in every conversation where you have to decide to speak up or to stay quiet. And you have to decide which choice will cost you less. That is what I was doing in that meeting. I was speaking calmly. I was asking reasonable questions. I was managing my tone. I was managing it so carefully that a man who was in the process of ending my livelihood felt comfortable enough to yell at me about an emotion I was not even expressing. I had the right to have, but I didn't have it. And researchers describe that as the shrinking effect, adapting to fit into traditional structures while quietly shrinking your personal identity to meet impossible normalized standards. And the cost of that shrinking is not just professional, it is spiritual, it is physical, it is the slow erosion of knowing who you actually are outside of that room. And at some point, something shifts. The questions stop being, how do I succeed here? And it starts being, what is this success costing me? Is this it? That shift is not a breakdown, it's an awakening. And I need you to pay attention to that. So let's talk about what happens in the space between walking out of the building and figuring out what to build next. Because if you are currently in that space, whether you left, by your own volition or the decision was made for you, I need you to hear me. That space is not empty. It just feels that way. So when I walked out of that building over 15 years ago, I did not have a plan. I didn't have a perfect plan. I just had a conviction. They will always treat you this way. That was the conviction I had. And there's nothing you can say or do or change how they see you, really. So you have to go out and build your own thing. And that conviction was enough for me to start. It did not answer every question. It did not solve the financial fear that I had. It did not tell me exactly what to build or how to build it, but it told me the direction to go. And direction is what you actually need when you are standing in that space between who you were and who you are becoming. And here's what the research says about that particular moment. The women who they make it through this transition are not the ones who have the most money saved or the most certainty about what's coming next. They're the ones who made a decision to stop succeeding at roles that require them to perform a false identity and start building something that required them to show up as exactly who they are. And that is not reckless, it's discernment. And there is a big difference. Now, please understand, I did not leave corporate with a 5-year plan. I left with prayer, I left with faith, and a conviction that God did not build me to keep me shrinking in rooms that were not built for me. And here is what I know now that I did not fully understand then. The gifts that God gave me, the ability to see people, to develop them, to help them find their way through hard things. Those gifts that I had were never meant for someone else's bottom line. They were meant for the women that He prepared me to serve. The corporate chapter, though, was not a waste. It was preparation. Every impossible manager that I had, every passed over promotion, every room where I had to make myself smaller, every meeting in conference rooms that were terminating me, where I actually sat calmly in and did not have to really. All of those things, it was building something in me that I could not have built any other way. And the $118 billion that Black women owned businesses are generating right now, that is not just an economic statistic. That is kingdom work, in my opinion. And that is what happens when women stop building someone else's table and they start building their own. Now, sis, if you're watching this and you just left corporate or you're getting ready to leave, right? You've been thinking about it for a while and you do not know what type of coach you are or what type of business owner you were called to be. I have a free quiz. It's called What Type of Faith-Based Coach Are You Secretly Meant to Be? Many people have taken it and it will show you in 3 minutes, about 3 minutes, where your gifts are actually pointing. So I will put a link to that in the description and make sure you go take it after watching this video or listening to this podcast. So what do you actually do in the first 90 days after this life-changing event happens, whether you were pushed out or you walked out? So here's what I wish someone would have told me. The first thing I would suggest that you do is do not let the exit define you. Whether you were fired, laid off, or you resigned, the way you left is not the story. What you build next is the story. So the man who yelled at me in that meeting does not get to be the author of what came after. Neither does yours. The second thing I would say is to not rush to build the same thing in a different building. The temptation when you leave corporate is to immediately find another job just like the one you left, or to build a business that looks exactly like your corporate job or your corporate structure that you just left. I need you to resist that. And I need you to take some time, if you can, and take some time to ask yourself what you actually want, not what you have been conditioned to want. Okay. And then third thing I would say is to take inventory of what you actually know, not just your job title, not just what's on your resume, but the actual problems you have solved, the people that you have developed, the situations you have navigated, the wisdom you have earned. That inventory is your business. That is your table. And then the fourth thing I would say is find your people before you find your plan. So isolation in this transition phase is very dangerous. You need women around you who are building the same thing, who understand the specific weight of what you're carrying right now, who will not tell you just to go find another job either. You need community around you that understands what you're dealing with. And that's really a strategy. And the fifth thing I would say is give yourself permission to be in this, to actually be in the chapter that you're in right now. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to know the direction. That's what you need to figure out is the direction. The rest gets built one decision at a time. I know it's scary, but just sit with it for a minute. So here's the thing. That incident in that room with that guy that happened to me over 15 years ago, it is still happening. It happened before me and it'll happen again. And it actually is still happening. That is just the painful truth. But it's also a clarifying one, right? Because if the table was never built for us, then the most powerful thing we can do is stop trying to earn a permanent seat at it and start building something that belongs to us completely. 2 million Black women own businesses. $118 billion in revenue. Billion. The fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the United States. We are not waiting anymore. And if you just walked out of a building or got walked out of one and you're standing in that space trying to figure out what comes next, I need you to hear this. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you have everything you need to build your own table. You do. The corporate chapter gave you actually that. It gave you that when it was trying to take everything else from you, I promise. And all you got to do is go build your own table now. And if this video or this podcast episode found you at just the right time, you are exactly who I create for. I need you to hit subscribe because every week we talk about taking everything God put in you and developing your calling with it. And if you are ready to take the next step, I have a mini course for you. It's called The Christian Woman's Blueprint to Her First Coaching Clients. And I'll put a link to that in the description. It is your roadmap from the building you just walked out of to the table you are about to build. Again, I'll put the link to that in the description. If you're listening to the Launch Your Coaching Ministry podcast, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I will see you in the next one.